Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Hazmat 101 Consultants HazChat. I'm your co-host, Bob Koshignano, with my partner in crime, Mr. Derek Shaman. Hello, Mr. Shaman.
Hello, how's everybody doing today?
Wonderful, as always. You and I are like a traveling band. We're all over the place, which is not bad. And the beginning start of summer. So much happening. And let's see, where are we going in a few days? Oh, that's right. Kiddies, we'll be
Baltimore.
in Baltimore. So please come and check us out at the Baltimore Hazmat Conference. We will be presenting June 6th through the 8th. We have the HITS class on June 6th. Saturday, the 8th, Derek and I are presenting the politics of hazmat. Toby Bevilacqua and I are doing mentorship, the lost art thereof. And we're going to see all our friends and have fun. And there might be a few surprises here and there. You never know, as happens in Baltimore. Also stays in Baltimore. So without further ado, we mentioned last month that we're talking about a call that I had, and it was dealing with experimental gas. And this gas is called carbohydrolium. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of it, this was kind of just to set the stage a little bit. This was my first shift back after being off for a month with 2 bulged discs in my back. So I was hoping for what ended up not being a quiet day of just relaxing, which there's no such thing at the big house. But we had this call come in at noon. And before we start getting into it and the pictures, I'm going to let Derek mention some things about the carbohydrolium, the process. We're not showing pictures of it. We're not showing video of it because of legalities that, may or may not still be going on out there, even though it's been several years now. So Derek, take it away.
All right, so for any of you who decided, hey, I'm going to grab a NIOSH or I'm going to pull up on my phone an app and look up carbohydrolium, you're probably finding that it isn't there. Because like Bob said, this is an experimental gas. The naming conventions and nomenclature that were used by the creator are not what we would normally find in the chemistry world. He kind of just combined some words and went with it. So basically what carbohydrolium is it was a resurgence of an old concept that's been around for a few decades, which is basically a wet gas. So the process for this that was being used at this facility was to take a graphite rod and create an arc underwater that would basically break the hydrogen bonds, and gas is captured that's generated from that. Is basically a water underwater arc generation system, and that gas is being captured in some cylinders with the idea of doing experimentation and testing. So to give a little bit more insight on what was being done here, the facility that Bob responded to wasn't really interested in producing the gas itself. They were working with someone in the process of automating the procedure so that there would be no need for gas storage in cylinders, that the gas would actually be produced on demand. So the facility this occurred at really specialized in automation. They had a background in animatronics, which Bob might go into a little bit later on, but that's why they were kind of selected for this process, was finding a way to automate it so that it wasn't being stored in cylinders. So just an idea of what some of the makeup of this gas was, if you broke it down into the byproduct of what they were actually capturing in these cylinders, obviously they had hydrogen, they had carbon monoxide, they had water vapor, and some other things. And the water vapor really is kind of the clue to where some of our problems came from. And from that, I'll turn it back over to Bob, and he'll share his experience, and I might go into a little bit more detail on the container and what Bob experienced with that container.
Yeah, and this thing produced methane, hydrogen. I was trying to think of all the other things. It was like six, seven things, a hodgepodge of gases and mixtures that, all were the right settings, if you will. What was kind of ironic is when I talked to obviously we had a failure, which you'll see in a minute. And when we talked to the scientist guy and questioned him about it, and he started explaining to me, and I said, "Oh, it's so you were making a flammable gas," because he had mentioned that he used this gas for cooking on his stove and everything else. And he looked me dead square in the face and said, "You obviously don't know shit about hazmat." And everybody, I'll never forget it. Everybody looked at him like, "Oh shit, you just kicked the hornet's nest, dude." So, not that I'm some super wizard, but I might know a thing or two. So, let's go to the picks. So, the first one, and like I said, this happened at noon, lunchtime, downtown Orlando. And I don't know, Derek, how many thousands of people were downtown at lunchtime on a
Oh, easily 20,000 people between the
oh,
office
for
buildings and
sure.
everything else,
Yeah.
easily. And within that general radius, we're getting close to those numbers.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. And this is like a small block area of the downtown area, core rather. So anyway, we were dispatched to um, multiple reports of an explosion. Now, to set the stage, this is, I think, 2013. So it's been some time, but it's September. Okay. So everybody's already on edge, being the anniversary month of 9/11. Um, the dispatch location had us a little nervous, and I'll explain why in a minute. So that was the general location. And then when you pull up now, also to set the stage for you, why I'm being dispatched to this is Engine 101 is not only the core group of the hazmat team, so to speak. That's what the hazmat officers on, that runs a team for the ship. But we're also a first due engine company, similar to a squad. So this was my first due area as an engine company. Plus I had the hazmat hat to wear as well. So we were dispatched to the building you see in front of you. And believe it or not, bricked up like that is actually a law firm, people working inside. I'm not going to name the law firm because I sure as hell don't want to be sued. But we've inspected it a few times, and I was amazed that anybody was there. So once you pull up and you see, the Bravo side, the Alpha side, and the Delta side, I got nothing showing. What you see is what I saw that day. And then I went down the alleyway on the right there to go look at the Charlie side so I could get a view of all four sides of the structure. When I did that, and this is the building that actually had the explosion, but if you see that parking lot, that's where I came back and saw that the Charlie side of that building in question, so that would be on the left, there's a big gaping hole in it, and it looks something like this. Okay. So it blew out that whole wall. Now, when we walked around back there was a lot of, how should I put this? People that probably show up in black SUVs running around with guns drawn, painter mask on. And again, like I said, this is a 9/11 anniversary month. And the reason for that is somewhere within a couple block vicinity, some of those black SUVs are housed, and we'll just leave that right there. So everybody was freaking out. But to me, it looked like a gas explosion at first. I mean, you look at the way that's blown out. Initial thoughts, we had a gas explosion. Except the spidey senses were saying, what, Derek? What's missing?
Well, there's no smoke, fire, there's no charring. There's just some sort of pressure has pushed things around or structural collapse.
Right. Now, the structure too, we've tried for years. Part of our job as a engine company, truck company, whatever, is you get monthly building inspections to do. So you go in, check exits, you guys know the routine. We could never get into this building for years. We knew from its previous history that it had heavy timber. It even had a basement. Yes, kids, there are basements here in Florida, and an elevator shaft, and some other fun tidbits, which you'll see in a minute. So it was quite interesting. But like Derek says, there's no signs of any fire gas. Oh, and yeah, there's no gas to the building. So automatically that kicks that whole scenario out the window. So
Yeah, and to add on to what Bob was saying about this building, it's one of the few remaining structures in Orlando that has that heavy timber type construction. If I'm not mistaken, the original construction of this building, it served as a cold storage,
I
so
think
it
so.
was very well insulated and a very substantial structure.
And then didn't it go to like it was a tire place or something? Because they took tires up and down the elevator or something.
Yeah, they did some sort of automotive service stuff in there, and that's where that very unique freight elevator system was
Right.
installed in the core of the building. It's a very substantial elevator itself. As far as a lot of freight elevators, we look at them in most of our modern buildings, they really aren't rated for much more than a standard elevator. They're just the one that it's okay to scratch up, bang up, and maybe it's a little bit bigger. But this is a substantial freight elevator designed for lifting a significant amount of weight.
Right. So here's a better picture to show what we had. And the wall, everybody's looking at that going, what the hell kind of block work is that? That's the old terracotta tile blocks that they made. You know, you think your typical block work nowadays. This is what it was made of back in the early 1900s. I don't remember how old this building was. And then they had this veneer on top of that, and so that hid that type of construction. And it's hard to see in the pictures, but there's several cylinders, 150-pound cylinders in the back of that debris by the exterior wall. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes, but that's the big gaping hole that we were like, holy shit, now what? About this point, we relocated everybody to the Alpha side of this building. This is the Charlie side. This is right next to the railroad. So you had CSX, Amtrak, Florida Freight, everybody coming through, and about another 50 yards ish is a major interstate, I-4. So we had a lot. The rail got shut down immediately, and I almost shut down I-4, but I held off on that. So as we go around the building to the front, we're discussing, what the hell is going on. And this guy comes up to us and says, hey, listen, we're making this gas, carbohydrolium, blah, blah, blah. This is the interior. So we asked him, was there anybody in there? No, everybody's gone. Okay, so it's not a life safety hazard anymore. We can dial it back. We don't hear anything. We don't see anything. Our air monitors, because, as I mentioned, we're an engine company, but we're also hazmat, are showing nothing. So we're like, okay, win-win. And that's when he informed us that he had 12 more bottles in there of this compressed gas. And I said, well, where are they? He said, well, they were, hint, hint, in the certain location, but I can't tell you now because I have no idea because of the explosion. I said, well, do you have an MSDS sheet? That's what we called it back then before we went to SDS. And he literally, this is no shit, pulled a napkin out of his back pocket and put it on the hood of the patrol car. And I thought, this is going to be fun.
Yeah. Now for a little insight in where we were in this whole process, while Bob's having this interaction, I'm sitting in an office for an appointment, and I'm seeing on the news, breaking news, there's been an explosion in downtown Orlando. And when I look on the news and they've got the choppers flying over, I'm like, oh, I know that building. The scientist that was involved in this was someone that was personally known to me. I had a friendly relationship with them, and had talked to them about some other stuff, automation type stuff, and I knew a little bit about what was going on there as far as that he was experimenting with a gas, didn't know he was doing it at that facility. So I'm trying to get in touch with Bob and say, hey, This is who you need to contact. This is the name of the gas. Can't tell you much else about it, but I know that he's been working on this. So if that's what it was, this is what it is. And at that same time, Bob is face to face with him, getting handed a napkin.
Yeah. Yeah. A napkin. You know what? I wish I had that because I would totally frame that son of a bitch and put it on the wall. Anyway, so we're like, okay, we've got more bottles. And as we looked on the side of the building, the Bravo side of this, we actually saw a bottle leaning out through a doorway. So they got rocketed all around in there from just one blowing up. That's when he informed us that he's had several leaks over the last few weeks. Just a pinhole, just, nothing to worry about. Like, okay, so we have to now, instead of just saying, all right, we're done, no problem, we have to go find these bottles and bleed the pressure off of these containers, but we got to find them first. So the first idea, we're fortunate that our bomb team is part of the fire department. So of course the bomb guys were, they're all giddy and whatever. So we're like, let's see, robot. Not going to work because they can't climb through over all that debris. A bomb guy. We'll send him in there. That's not going to work because all this stuff he's got to wear. So, we need to find two geniuses or idiots, depending on how you want to look at the situation, that can go in there, ID where the bottles are, and bleed them off. Excuse me. I'm idiot number one. My fireman was idiot number two. Because really, that's what we had left. We had no other option. So our plan was, and we go in with, we call it a ram nozzle. Basically, it was a 2.5 inch line, Derek, or 2-inch line, unmanned nozzle that you can shoot up, for a deluge system. So
it's a small monitor.
Small monitor. There you go. So we took this line in with us. We were fortunate enough to have air monitoring capability that we could use Bluetooth, and we were able to get the robot in there to some point. Now, set the stage. This is the plan. The plan is we're going to go in there. We're going to find the bottles. We have the air monitoring set up remotely inside that can be seen outside. We're going to bleed the gas, turn on the ram nozzle, and through hydraulics, force that gas out that big gaping hole. We'll use the robot's microphone to listen for the hissing of the bottle. And when it stops, we know it's empty. Real high-tech stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
So when we open the bottle, I believe it was something like 77% LEL. Now, again, that's 77% of what? Methane. That's what our meter's calibrated to. Have no clue what it would have been for carbohydrolium because it's not listed anywhere for a correction.
So you're saying there's not a conversion factor or a correction factor for carbohydrolium?
Nope.
So friends, when you have that, if you are able to determine what the different compounds are, the only option you really have is to, out of what all's in it, try to go with the worst case scenario, and then that should give you the best safety factor.
Yeah. And just already being at 77%, we're like, oh, we need to do something here pretty quick. So as soon, and I forgot what the CO level was. It was pretty high as well. When we hydraulically ventilated, we dropped, I believe it was 3% LEL. So our tactic worked. Matter of fact, if you want to know the exact numbers, in this month's Hazmat HQ magazine, there's the article on it that has the numbers and what we actually loaded it to. So once we heard the hissing stop via the bomb robot, went in there, shut down the hose line, turned the bottle off, marked it, drew it on a map that we carried with us, and then dragged the hose around all that until we got to the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. And that went on for almost 8 hours. So I was real happy. And I forgot to mention the story. Kind of funny because my fireman at the time, Ed Markle, he, somebody asked him why, this is pre him being on the bomb team, asked him why he was putting earplugs in. He said, and this is no lie, I don't want to hear myself blow up. And he tells me the story afterwards. And I'm like, thank God you told me that story afterwards, dude. Cause I didn't need to hear that beforehand. So that's what we did.
At least he didn't blindfold himself.
Yeah.
So
quick last cigarette, make that last phone call, whatever. Yeah. It was a long, tedious process, and we swapped out crews. The mayor showed up, everybody and their brothers showed up. So we rotated crews out pretty frequently. We didn't want anybody to get overworked. As I said, September, Florida is still hot. And this went on for a while. CSX and rail, they were not happy we had it shut down. But when I say it was next to the tracks, I mean like 10 feet from the tracks, maybe 20 at the most. And as I said, we had a bottle literally aimed towards the tracks. So I wasn't going to take that risk. But that was it in a nutshell. But then to see what caused this mayhem was a simple 150-pound cylinder that the guy was using in an arc welder set. Derek, take it from here.
So to clarify, because we've kind of hit on it, what was experienced was not an explosion. It was a catastrophic failure of a compressed gas cylinder. So it was a pressure release. It was a rupture. So basically, you still have the same shock wave, the same kind of pressure wave, but there's no incendiary aspect to it. So when we talk about explosions, we're talking about incendiary. This is just a rupture, a failure, but still does just as much damage. Still very dangerous. And in last month's HazChat, we talked about carbon dioxide dewars failing. So same thing. Don't discount the amount of force and energy that's released from these products without explosion. Just the rupture itself is a lot of energy. So what we're looking at here is a cylinder. Like Bob said, this is your typical cylinder that everyone's probably trained with, similar to a 150-pound chlorine cylinder. It is not, in fact, a chlorine cylinder. It was carrying a different product, which that product was them capturing the carbohydrylium. So something that should jump out about this cylinder is the way that it came apart. It looks like it kind of just ripped apart and unraveled. But the other key and the clue here was the amount of discoloration from oxidization. So basically rusting on the inside of that cylinder. So doing some research, I came across some information on what is called the hydrogen embrittlement of carbon steel. So this carbon steel cylinder was not rated for the product that was being put into it. So this comes back to our compatibility concerns. The big problem that was occurring with this cylinder, from what I could ascertain talking to some cylinder people at the time and some people who were a little bit more knowledgeable than me, was because this is what is known as a wet gas. So basically it has a significant moisture content in it with the way that it was being generated by being an arc that was underwater. You had a lot of water vapor that was going into this cylinder. Well, those hydrogen molecules are very small, and carrying with that water vapor, basically any small imperfections in that carbon steel, those molecules are able to get into through expansion and contraction with the temperature changes that are occurring from releasing pressure, from building pressure. Basically, it starts to widen those very minuscule fissures that naturally occur in that carbon steel, slowly get widened and widened. And eventually there's a weak point, and that's where the failure is going to occur. Now, these cylinders, when the gas was being captured, the way these cylinders were being filled was just using if I'm not mistaken, just a little 5 horsepower electric air compressor. So
Yep.
it was a system that works. It was very very creative way of doing things, but none of the equipment that was being used in this process was designed or rated for what was being done. And this was an example of, oh, we need a cylinder to put this into. We can buy these cylinders, and there wasn't a real compatibility check. Now, I indicated before that this wet gas concept has been around for a few decades. The same advisor who was involved in this was also involved in another incident about 20 years prior that, Bob, if I'm not mistaken, actually resulted in a fatality.
I think so. Yeah.
When a similar occurrence happened. And there was also another entity completely unrelated that started producing this product on the west coast of Florida. Because not only is this a fantastic cooking gas, which is what it was being used for here, it's actually a pretty significant cutting fuel. So to see this thing cut through steel I-beams when they hooked it up to a torch was pretty impressive. There were actually some fire departments that started using this experimental gas. And after reaching out to them about some of the concerns and the process that this other company was using out there, they've kind of backed away from that. And unfortunately, that facility ended up having a failure of a cylinder, which also resulted in a fatality. So there's a lot of interest behind this concept of producing this type of gas. Unfortunately, a lot of it is being done by people who are either untrained or undertrained.
Right.
And there's a lot of shortcuts being taken and things that we weren't aware of. Big concern that occurred with this one was that a hazardous materials permit had never been filed for. So while we had never been inside that structure for an inspection, there was never an indication that there was a hazardous material being stored or produced inside of that facility. So that would have given us a little more enforcement effort on trying to get in there to do those company surveys. I had actually been inside this facility prior to this and was not aware that this operation was occurring inside the facility. I knew that there was some experimentation that was going to be going on, but to that point, it was all being done off-site somewhere else, and I really didn't have any good details on it. Just, hey, there's this cool thing that we're thinking about doing. And I was like, yeah, kind of a passing. You hear all sorts of people doing cool stuff that never turns into anything, and this turned into something.
Yeah. And matter of fact, while we were mitigating this incident, a restaurant south of Orlando called and said, hey, we bought one of these bottles and we're using it. Can you come take care of it? And we're like, yeah, no, take it outside. We're a little busy right now. So we'll get back with you.
Yeah, so that was the interesting thing too, was while the proof of concept for the gas was there, it could be used as a cooking fuel. Of course, we don't know exactly what byproducts from the combustion of this gas is that causing any kind of concerns for the safety of the food that was being eaten. They were performing testing for the emissions created by the gas using basically adapted O2 sensors and other detection equipment that was designed for the automotive industry, without necessarily knowing, exactly what they should be looking for. They were just looking for the things that they could find the ability to detect for. So just very interesting stuff. You have a lot of these kind of things that are out there where someone's just, they're tinkering around with something in their garage, and you never know what you're going to find in your backyard one day. And fortunately, no one was injured in this incident, but it definitely opened my eyes, and I think opened Bob's eyes to, this stuff is out there. And as well-intentioned as people may be with wanting to create an alternative, sometimes they don't have the education behind it to know if what they're doing is a safe operation or not.
Yeah. And just to remind people too, this is why it's so important for those first due units. And this is what we talk about in our ops review class. The first due units set the building blocks for hopefully will be a successful outcome. It just so happened that the first due unit here, not because it was me, but was a hazmat engine company. So you were able to see a little bit better. So, please take a few extra seconds, and even if you're not a hazmat person, put your hazmat hat on that you may or may not remember from your academy days, or whatever, and look at things a little more intently than you normally would, because things aren't always what they seem. This was, they talk about career calls. I have two career calls. One where a train came through downtown Orlando and caught 4 or 5 buildings on fire. That was a career call. And this is the other. So, you know, one of those things, but awesome. Good stuff. Good stuff.
So Bob, in highlighting the importance of those first in units, whether it's them responding to a call or doing their company surveys, them being aware of the potential for hazards, knowing what their actions should be, what their capabilities and limitations are. It sounds like you're saying that we need to advocate for these operations level people receiving sufficient and adequate training.
Absolutely.
And maintaining that training.
Absolutely.
So where could they find some training like that?
You might be able, good plug. You might be able to find that on our website at hazmat101consultants.com. We do a 3-hour ops review class. We could do it on, in person or online, either one. But, again, not trying to just plug the class, but plug the information, because those first due units are crucial. That's why we started that class, was because we were finding people would not have recognized what was going on here. Even with me being a hazmat tech, I thought it was a gas explosion until I started putting the pieces together. But you can't just do your hazmat training on a computer, click point, as we like to say. And you can certainly reach out to us for more information on our ops review class. So with that, before we head off, let me mention a couple things. We've got Hazmat HQ. The next issue will be dropping in a few days. As I mentioned, the discussion we just had is one of the articles in it with the more definitive numbers that I had talked about. And then some of our great websites, Hazmat 101 Consultants, Facebook, YouTube, and webpage. If you miss any of our HazChats, that's the place to go, is our YouTube channel. Please make sure you subscribe. Make sure you check out the other issues that have been dropped. And then the Hazmat Guys Roundtable, first Tuesday of first Tuesday of every month, 8 p.m. Eastern. Myself, Bobby, Mike, and Jay-Z do a live show. Hazmat Group 2, Hazmat Our Group, and Common Sense Group. All great sites for you to get information from, other people, not just, us two Joe Schmuckarellis here. We know a little bit, but there's people that know way more than us. And why reinvent the wheel? Ask the questions to those people on those sites. So great community, great resources. Encourage you all to check them out. And as Derek mentioned, all kidding aside, if you want more information on our Hazmat Ops Review class, go to Bob at hazmat101consultants.com. We'll be happy to talk to you about that in more detail, because we want to make sure, far none, that everybody is safe. That's our number one goal. So, Derek, anything else before we go?
No, we just had Memorial Day yesterday, so it's a good time to reflect on the sacrifices that were made for our country by our servicemen and women. So we thank those who made the ultimate sacrifice for that. And as we move forward into going into the rest of the year, just look out for each other, take care of each other.
That's right. And for those still serving that protect us all, thank you for your service. So with that, hopefully we'll see you in Baltimore next week, or we'll just see you here next month. Take care. Stay safe.